Welcome back, Dolphins. Today was going to be a quick video. Sorry about last week only producing 2 videos. I was very busy at work. But today we're going to be discussing who are going to be the surprising rookie breakouts. And I think you're going to be kind of low-key surprised about this. The first 2 round picks I'm not going to include in this. So obviously, I think we're going to start with Ollie Gordon. Ollie Gordon is going to be one of those guys that I think, and the reason behind not including the first 2 is because by meaning of breakout, before we get into Ollie Gordon, meaning of breakout is superseding the expectations of what they have for that player. Now, Kenneth Grant and Jonas Savaianea, I believe that they're going to play up to what we drafted them at, but I think those positions also require years of understanding the position before you have a breakout season. So what I mean by breakout is, a first round pick, if they play well, is not a breakout. He would have to get like 15 sacks in his first year, which personally, I don't think either one of those guys is going to have a year like that. They're going to take some time to groom and develop. So Ollie Gordon is my first one. And it's because I think we're really, I truly think that we're going to see a lot of Ollie Gordon this year. I think that people don't realize how good he was in college when he was playing for the Badgers, I think it was. He was incredible. And the running back position is so finicky because it depends on the offensive line so much, where if you have a crap offensive line, I don't care how good you are, unless you're Barry Sanders, which he was the only one that could really do that, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to get yardage because you're going to get tackled for loss. It's kind of what happened to Achane last year, is that he was getting immediately hit at the line of scrimmage. He wasn't getting any time to run the ball. But Ollie Gordon is a very similar type of year that he had with his college team. The year prior, he was in the Heisman Trophy race. He had a decent offensive line, which was allowing him to get the holes that he needed to get in order to get yardage. And once he got past that, he was kind of similar to like a Derrick Henry, where once he gets steam rolling, it's hard to bring him down. And the year after that, all of his offensive line either went to college or, were seniors and they, went on to do different things. And he had probably one of the worst offensive lines in college football still. And this is how you know he's going to have a decent year. And honestly, still produced a lot of touchdowns. If I'm not mistaken, he had like 13 touchdowns this last year, which what that means to me is that in the short yardage situations, when it was time for him to showcase how good of a running back he is, he did it, and he would score touchdowns with this team. It's just the offensive line was just horrid, so he could not get back to the year that he had before. A lot of those premier running backs that we always see coming out, typically they have a really good offensive line too. Most of the time it's like Alabama running backs or Georgia running backs, which kind of goes along with they also have a very good offensive line that allows them to, get uncovered and go through holes. With Ollie Gordon, his offensive line was just doo-doo butter. It was horrible. And if you watch some of the clips, if you can go into, the highlights of college, if you watch the clips, it was just embarrassing some of the times where he was just getting hit immediately when he gets the ball. I think there was even a highlight where he literally didn't even get the ball fully cradled yet, and there was somebody right in his face. His offensive line was terrible. So coming into the season, I think people are sleeping on the type, with football, it's like such an up and down thing these days, where it's somebody could be completely on the highest of the mountains and the next day they could be hot garbage. And with Ollie Gordon, yes, there are some flaws, 100%. And do I think he's going to take the lead back? Probably not. But I think a 230-pound running back that can catch out of the backfield and block and also is pretty shifty when it comes to him running the ball, I think he's going to do a lot of good things coming into this season, and I think he's going to have a really surprising breakout year. The next one I want to talk about is Jason Marshall. Right now we haven't signed anybody for cornerback, and it's still the one position of need that we really, really need to address. I think the Minkah Fitzpatrick thing was phenomenal. If you really took a look at Jalen Ramsey last year, I know he is Jalen Ramsey and he has the prowess, but when you really take a look at how he played last year, he was not worth the money that we were giving him. Minkah Fitzpatrick, by the way, he definitely plays at a higher level at this point in his career than Jalen Ramsey. I think he's only 28 as well. So we're getting him in his prime, and who I think I'm diving off here, is Jason Marshall. I think Jason Marshall as a rookie, a lot of us were kind of bad-mouthing him, and he was basically the pick right after Jonah. But what I'm seeing in minicamp, and we'll see what happens in training camp, he has, again, what the Dolphins did this year with their later round picks is they drafted a lot of players that have a lot of potential, but didn't play up to their potential in college. It's, there's a fine line. And I know we hear that for a lot, but with Jason Marshall, he was a 5-star recruit. He was a highly touted high school player. And when he went to Florida, he just didn't play up to the hype that he had coming out of high school. But sometimes players can be late bloomers. And what we ended up seeing in training camp is, number one, we never called his name, which means that he wasn't getting burnt on anything. And number two, he was actually playing pretty well, way better than we anticipated a corner to play. And sometimes the Dolphins are really good at this, with Cater Kohu and finding some of these studs, what's his name? The nickel guy that we had for Nick Needham. They're pretty good at finding these late round corners that come in and contribute immediately. And I think he could be one of those. He's the 4th round pick, so he's not, a super late pick, but he could definitely play up to a higher potential. I think he's going to see the field this year because I think Cam Smith is just, I don't know, we'll figure out what he's doing, and obviously in training camp is the key to see where Cam Smith is. But what I'm hearing in minicamp and so far the mindset of Jason Marshall, which again, there's so many extenuating circumstances with players where it could also come down to coaching. You don't gel with the coach that you had in college, so you don't give 100%, which is kind of stupid, but, they're young kids. You're 18, 19, 20 years old. Sometimes you make bad decisions. And with him, it might be that, in Florida, it just wasn't fully tapping into his potential. He wasn't in the right situation, and the Dolphins can possibly unlock more out of him this coming year, and I think he's definitely going to touch the field. He's 6'1", 6'2", like 200 pounds, like 210 maybe. He's a bigger corner that can play the X or the Y, and I think if he really just dives into the playbook, figures it out, I think Anthony Weaver's playbook is much more simple than, a lot of the other defensive coordinators that we've had before. I think if you can dive into it, have the right mindset, he might really see the field this year, and we could possibly room to being something, besides Cam Smith. Andrew Armstrong, I totally brain farting on the first name. Armstrong, the undrafted free agent that we got from Arkansas, the wide receiver. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. And what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is that, again, we're talking about breakouts as superseding the potential of what they're coming in as. He's an undrafted free agent, but I think we all know that most of us thought that he was going to get drafted, and the basis of it is because of how many yards he had. He had over 1,000 yards, and, he's a 6'4" receiver. That's pretty fast. Andrew Armstrong, I think, is going to come in and make a difference on this team during training camp. I think he will be that basketball player that can come in on certain packages because Eric Ezukama is just not turning up to being what we thought he was going to be when we drafted him. And Anthony Armstrong could definitely be what I consider a comp for him is like a Preston Williams. He could definitely be like another Preston Williams as long as he doesn't get injured. And he could really do exactly what Preston did in Tua's rookie year, where he was basically the basketball player. Tua would be able to throw it up to him, and he would come down with it, If we play, which we probably won't this year too much, but if we play in a spread offense, I think Andrew Armstrong is going to see the field because of his height, weight, speed, all of that stuff. It's a perfect prototype, and Mike McDaniel really does like those prototypes. And I think Andrew Armstrong was a perfect pickup for the coach of Mike McDaniel. I think he's going to turn him into, now again, is he going to have 1,000 yards this coming year? No, I don't think he's going to be our number one receiver, but breakout meaning that he's going to touch the field and he's going to have some pretty unique plays. I honestly think the plays that Eric Ezukama might have had if Andrew Armstrong starts really playing, at a high level during training camp. I mean, we'll see what happens with Ezukama, but I think Andrew Armstrong could start taking that role. And again, goal line situations, you have Westbrook Akine, you have Andrew Armstrong, and then you have Waddle or Tyreek. you can definitely make much more of a difference for Tua. I feel so bad for Tua, and that's what I think they did this year with a lot of these receivers is Tua has always had these short little guys. I think there was even in the top 100, I think it was a guy from the Colts or something like that, where he was like, people underestimate Tua. Like, his receivers are so tiny and short, and he's so accurate with it. It's really like, people don't understand how hard it is, because it is. It's like his receivers have been 5'10" since he's been in the NFL. Do you know how hard that is as a quarterback, where you can barely see your receivers over the offensive line? Like that, it just really kind of conceptualized this, where Andrew Armstrong 6'4", Westbrook-Ikine 6'2", 6'3". Most of Tua's receivers have been 5'10", where you can barely see them over the offensive line in front of you because they're so tiny. That's why we have to run all these routes to get them all the way out there, because you can't really see them over the offensive line. They're so short. So giving Tua some of these guys that are really going to be at a height level that he can throw the ball up to, and it can be something where, when we threw it up to the Derek Stingley thing, even if Tyreek Hill didn't have a messed up hand, still throwing that ball up to Tyreek Hill, there's so much more potential for it to be picked off, versus when you have like a Jamar Chase or anybody of that size, where they can go up and you can throw the ball to where only they can get it. With Tyreek Hill, and no offense, with Waddle as well, you can't really do that. No matter where you throw it, the cornerback still has the potential. Most of the time, the corners are taller than them to pick it off. So when you get Andrew Armstrong, someone that I think can come in and you can just throw the ball up, like Darren Waller as well, throw the ball up, and he can just throw it to exactly where only Andrew Armstrong can come down with it, just like Preston Williams. Back when we had Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, I think it was easier for Tua because he didn't have to pinpoint throw the ball every single time. And I think he's going to be one of those that he's going to make a difference in the goal area, where instead of having to throw a fade to Tyreek Hill and be pinpoint accurate to put it right in the edge of the end zone, you can just throw it up like he used to do with Gesicki and let Andrew Armstrong go and get it, or throw it to a point where nobody else can get it and only Andrew can get it because of that 6'4" stature. So I think those are going to be the three rookies that are going to break out this year. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think, if you have some different players, but those are going to be the main ones. Like I said, first two picks, I think they're going to play up to exactly where we picked them. I don't think they're going to supersede that, but they're going to be exactly what we need them to be in the first year, and they're going to grow eventually. But breakout-wise, doing something that most people don't think that these picks are going to do, I think these are the rookies that you're definitely going to see on the field that will make a difference. Fins up, baby. Love you all. Peace.